Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first public event of CIRPASS focused on shaping the future of the digital product passport. And my name is Diễm Trần. I'm the project communication manager at Digital Europe. And in CIRPASS, Digital Europe is leading on the communications, dissemination, and stakeholder engagement activities. Very nice to welcome all of you today, and thank you so much for joining with us. Since the kickoff of CIRPASS, we already received a lot of emails, connection requests, questions from stakeholders. So it shows that there's a huge interest in the digital product passports as well as CIRPASS. So we hope that during this event, you will receive the information that you are looking for. And also through this event, we will also introduce to you some stakeholder engagement activities that we are really looking forward to having you joining with us in the future during the duration of the project. Now let's go into the agenda of the event today. As you know that for today, we will have the keynote speech from Elias at the European Commission. And then we will have an introduction to CIRPASS by the project coordinator, Caroline from CA. And then we will have two panel discussions, very important, that we focus on the shaping of the future of digital product passports, as well as the DPP prototypes in the three key sectors, electronics, batteries, and textiles. And of course, we will also present to you the stakeholder engagement activities and how you can engage with the project. Before we start the key section of today, I could like to introduce you like some way for you to interact with us during this event. So at the bottom of your screen, you can see there's a chat box. And there you can ask questions to us and then or introduce yourself. Our team will monitor the chat and then answer on the general questions there. And the questions to the speakers will be answered during the Q&A section at the end of each panel. And then at the end of the conference, we will invite you to do a short live post, also for us to understand more about you, and also for you to also share with us the interest topic that you might have and want to receive from CIRPASS. Now, come to the social media today. So for this event, we will do the live tweet on CIRPASS Twitter. So please follow us on CIRPASS Twitter and use the hashtag CIRPASS and DPP to tweet and to discuss about the event today. And besides Twitter, we also have LinkedIn and YouTube channel. And also to let you know that, as you already know from the registration form, that the event today will be recorded, and the recording will be shared via CIRPASS channels after the event. So hopefully that we will receive a lot of interest, also interaction from you today. And now I will not let all of you wait for longer. I would like to introduce to you Mr. Elias Yakovidis, Advisor for Societal Challenges and Green and Digital Transition from DG Connect European Commission to deliver a keynote speech for the event today. Elias, welcome.
Thank you. So good morning, CIRPASS. This is my good morning Vietnam, because we're entering in the real work of digital product passport. So CIRPASS, you will know more about it from Caroline, who is leading the consortium. CIRPASS is a Digital Europe program coordination and support action. That means it's an action that's supposed to gather everything we know and is out there that relates to digital product passport. And they have already collected, and you will see, over 100 proxies of what we call digital product passport. But before we go into that, let me say a couple of words about why we're doing this. For those of you that are here for the first time, let me remind you that the official concept and definition of digital product passport is to be found in the regulation adopted by the Commission on the 30th of March called Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation. There we have articles from 8 to 13 description of what we call the official EU digital product passport. But as I said, there are many of you that are participating and many more that are already entertaining this application concept, already something that is introduced in the market, that are close parts of what we would call digital product passport. And we need to converge, because digital product passport is a mean to what we call transition to circular economy. Non-circularity of our economy is one of the major problems behind the climate change, biodiversity loss, and overall depletion of our natural resources. The economy, the way the economy runs for us today, the growth of economy is associated with increased depletion of natural resource. And think about it not only as oil and gas, but anything that would fall under natural resource, and that's soil, wood, metals, anything that we use and we don't value enough. Our business models, most of the business models in our economy are so-called quantity-based business models. More I sell in terms of materials, more money I make. And that is true for anything from automotive, tons of steel, cars, to pesticides and fertilizers and herbicides, tons of those, to mobile phones and laptops and iPads. More you buy as gadgets, more money is made by the business model. So what we trying to do with the digital product passport is the mean to provide information about those products so the business models can gradually shift to product as a service. So everything as a service. The overall North Star, and that is important to keep in mind because we will get into very difficult situations, how to progress and where to base our DPP first, how to snowball it and where to really start. This North Star of DPP is addressing the sustainability of a product in a way that it can increase its circularity, its durability, reparability, refurbishability. There are 9 R's. I'm not going to go through all of them. And at the end, if necessary, recyclability. But recycling is kind of the last R that you should attack. The overall narrative, the overall North Star for us, where DPP is a mean, is addressing social, and that means individual citizen consumer needs and social needs with less materials, with less natural resources, and more of recycled resources, not primary resource. That is the North Star. For that, we need to change business models. So business models have to address our needs and have to, grow the economy without necessarily one-to-one relation with the increase of primary resource. And for that, DPP is a critical role because we will never get businesses to move to product as a service if we don't give them a situational awareness. What is happening with that product, where it comes from, where it's going, what is its performance, where its reparation, when it's going to hit the end of life, when that material will come back. For all of that, to have this situational awareness in our economy, we need a lot of information technology and data management. And DPP is there as the flagship of many other things that will be needed, of course, but DPP is kind of the tip of an iceberg that we need to work. Now, how this will work, it's going to take some time, and don't rush to already fix it because there will be many stakeholders that will need to put their views. And as you will see, there is already a big legacy. Carol even explained how much we have already found that is happening there. Now, I would like to just introduce the concept of DPP on 2 strands. One is the DPP system that we will need to standardize, and that is the first headache and first challenge that we have, how to standardize the DPP system that will have to handle product passports in different product categories. And as you will go through today, you will see that there is a very specific construction for the digital product passport. We are basically introducing the framework regulation that will hopefully be adopted within let's say next year and a half max, that will give us the right to go into each product category separately to define with the stakeholders the data that will be, part of the product passport, including who can see it, who will be responsible for it, and who will be using it and for how long they will be stored, and all these details behind each product passport. In that sense, because many of you ask, the manufacturer, whoever places the product on a market, will be the more equal stakeholder. They will have to introduce the product passport and manage it a bit more than the others that can basically in a decentralized manner keep the information related to what they're doing with it, okay? So this is the product passport data, but the system is the system that we need to standardize, because anything that deals with identification, access management, security, authentication has to be standardized across all product categories. So the system is kind of the more urgent issue, and then we will start one category at a time, standardizing what is in the product passport. It will take some time, so we ask your patience, but also your engagement throughout. And this is something that this project is there for that reason. For the next 16 months, because we already are 2 months alive, for the next 16 months, CIRPASS will be the platform to bring all the knowledge together. That's why it's called coordination action. We as DG Connect, together with HADEA, so Fanny Tsirandonaki is there, we will introduce a pilot at the end of 23. So there will be a call for proposal next year where we will actually not a pilot, but actually a grant to the winning consortium to actually test and try the product passport live to see what exactly we have missed, what exactly needs to be done more. So there is a pilot coming up next year in the Digital Europe program to actually do it on a large scale. Now, just to end, this digital product passport is a venture. It's actually an initiative of many general directorates in the European Commission. The general directorates mostly involved is beyond DG Connect, DG Grow. So you will see Michele Galatola in the next session, basically as the DPP, as we call it, Digital Product Passport Musketeer, as well as William Neal, who is from DG Environment, who will be also in the session after that. So we are the three main digital product passport, together with Almut, that joined us for some time, Almut Nagel, and she will go back to the Perm Rep, German Perm Rep. We were the DPP, let's say, musketeers at the moment. But enough said, I wanted to just tell you what is really the main why of DPP, and never lose track of the why, because we will need that why always when we get into difficulties to come back to where DPP is really the most important, and that is to ensure circularity of our economy, circularity, sustainability of our products, because that is the main, let's say, driver of the problems that we're facing today with respect to sustainability. So thank you very much. Have a productive meeting.
Thank you, Ilyas. A very nice keynote speech, and I think that through your keynote speech, people can already get what we will focus through other sections today, especially the two panel discussion. And again, thank you for emphasizing the important role of DPP and how it can contribute to Europe's circular economy development. And now, so in the development of the digital product passport, what is the role of CIRPASS? What are we doing in this project? How stakeholders can engage? So right now, I could like to invite Ms. Caroline Benier, the project coordinator of CIRPASS from CA, will provide you with more information about CIRPASS. Caroline, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Diem. So first of all, welcome all to our first public event. So my role is to introduce what is CIRPASS exactly and what we're doing and what we will do. So very briefly to introduce myself, I am from CEA, which is a French, one of France's largest public research institute. We do everything from fundamental research to technological research for industry. My personal background is computer engineering with a background in integrated circuit design for telecommunications and IoT. More recently, I joined the LIST Institute, which is the Smart Digital Systems Institute, where I focus more on embedded systems and circular electronics and digital tools for circular economy. So to introduce what exactly is CIRPASS. So CIRPASS is a consortium of partners which won the European Commission's call for proposal DigiPass, which was published in the fall of 2021. As Ilias said, it is the coordination and support action. We have a budget of 2 million euros, and it's an 18-month total duration. We started October 1st. There are 30 partners within this consortium. I will introduce them later. So we have several objectives. The first is to create an inclusive forum to build a common understanding of what is cross-sectoral DPP. So this is what is unique about CIRPASS is it's this focus on this cross-sectoral aspects of the DPP. We also have an objective to build stakeholder consensus on DPP prototypes in 3 sectors, batteries, textiles, electronics. And here, what is the term prototype here is meant to be a simple description of a digital product passport, including agreements and suggestions on all aspects, including data, technical, semantic, organizational, and legal. As you heard Ilias say, we have been asked to put our priority focus on the cross-sectoral aspects of the DPP system. So here you have the 30 partners of the CIRPASS consortium. You can see that they're covering the 3 sectors. We also have partners with cross-sectoral expertise. I distinguish here the research and technology organizations from Europe that are with us from the other partners, but we all work together. They're partners coming from standardization, partners coming with a circular economy and sustainability expertise, solution providers, communications agencies, data federation experts, etc. So a very wide range of expertise. I would like to mention here that at least 21 of these partners have ongoing DPP-related initiatives. Some of these initiatives are covering customs issues or supply chain traceability issues. Others are more focusing on the 9 R's of the circular economy, so how to enable that using data by data sharing. And many other initiatives that are similar or go in the direction of the digital product passports. Of course, none of these initiatives are interoperable, at least not for the moment. So just to give you a feeling for the scale of this collaboration, these 30 partners result in approximately 80 active participants inside the consortium. To this group is associated an expert and stakeholder group, which counts approximately 200 experts from a very wide range of disciplines. We receive approximately 1 presentation request per week, which we share amongst ourselves to share the workload associated with this. We receive approximately 3 meeting requests per week, which is very difficult to honor for the moment. I apologize for that. But what I want to stress is that all of the contact requests that we receive, all of the information and slides that we receive from external partners is shared fully within the consortium among the consortium partners. So one of my major tasks is to imagine creative ways to exploit this massive amounts of expertise in a constructive manner. So we have the following work streams, which are all running in parallel. One is more focusing on the information architecture. One is more focusing on the DPP system architecture. In parallel to this, we have a standardization stream for the DPP standard stack. A fourth one is trying to bring all of this together into define these what are the prototypes that we spoke about before, and two other work streams for management and communications for handling all of the contacts to and the exploitation of our large external expert and stakeholder groups. So we have a certain number of project values, and I wanted to explain here how we embody these values more specifically. So inside the consortium, we focus on neutrality and transparency. So how do we do this? So first, I mentioned that there are no manufacturing company inside the consortium for better neutrality. And second, all of the work streams are led by either a research and technology organization or a circular economy and sustainability consultancy, or when it's not possible to do otherwise, we also have the possibility to co-chair work streams among partners. We have a project plan with clear common rules that we constantly strive on improving as our needs arise. And we have a huge effort for sharing information widely to all CIRPASS partners and participants, which are spread from Eastern Europe to the west side of the United States. So this is a big challenge. And so this communication effort is really very important and massive. So outside of the consortium, we focus on two values, inclusiveness and transparency. So by trying to have the largest reach out possible within manageable bounds, all of the contributions we received are treated in the public domain by default. Our project deliverables will be public, and we'll try to use as much as possible objective criteria for our analysis. We will also describe transparently the methodology used to achieve consensus on the different work streams, and we will use our website to collect contributions from external partners through polls, surveys, requests for comments on published content. We hope to share knowledge with the large-scale DPP community and promote a common DPP terminology. So on the topic of terminology, I think it's very important that we start to align our terminology all together, because clearly to build the digital product passport, we require a very large number of disciplines and experts. I will not detail all of these that I wrote here just off the top of my head, but it's clear that all of these experts speak a very specific language, and so we have to learn to speak a common DPP language. So what I'm proposing here today is that we align with the terminology of the European Commission, and so we use their words. So this slide is from the European Commission. I put the reference at the bottom if you want to get them, the direct source. So what is a DPP? It's a structured collection of product-related data with predefined scope and agreed data ownership and access rights conveyed through a unique identifier. In the vision of the European Commission, this is a decentralized system with a central registry, and the scope of the data carried by the digital product passport is information related to sustainability, circularity, value retention for all of the R's of the circular economy. As Elias said, there's a clear distinction between what concerns the cross-sectoral aspects of the DPP systems and what concerns the sector-specific data requirements. So the DPP system is all of the IT architecture and the standards and protocols related to embody this architecture. And this also includes the DPP registry that was what I mentioned on the previous slide. On the DPP data side, there's different components of this data structure. There's the tracking and tracing identifiers, and then all the additional attributes of the products that are sector specific. The registry itself will be used only to store the the necessary track and trace information, possibly also including the product identifier. So while we're on the topic of terminology, I propose to introduce 4 additional terms that are useful which are product ID, data carrier, digital connector, and data space for smart circular applications. So here in this figure, you have a completely theoretical example of a digital product passport here for a cellular telephone. It's completely theoretical, as well as the battery that is contained within this cell phone, which two products to which I assume here in this example that to which must be attached a digital product passport. So to build these passports, you need a product identifier, which has to be unique and persistent. You also need a data carrier, which could be anything from an RFID chip, a QR code, a digital watermark, a Bluetooth tag. It can be anything, but it has to carry this identifier. Then you need a digital connector to connect the product identifier to the digital place of information on the product, for example, a URI. And then the last pillar is the IT architecture to facilitate the data exchanged. And of course, it's composed of standardized vocabularies and data exchange protocols and stakeholder-dependent access mechanisms for read-write and edit rights, as well as the distributed storage of information and in connection with potentially the other European data spaces. What was not mentioned on the previous slide is that also will be required a stakeholder-dependent interaction layer, so that the stakeholder that needs to access the DPP data has this access in a meaningful way to him or her. Here, I would like to share my personal vision for the digital product passport system. So I see the DPP as an information system for the circular economy. It has to be based on open standards and decentralized, with a focus on data interoperability, meaning that data has to be machine readable, structured, and searchable, as stated in the ESBR. It requires a permissioned access to data and data usage control. We are looking for a not from scratch solution and a system that is flexible enough for maximum reuse of legacy systems and standards. As we observed, hundreds of companies are rolling out DPP solutions right now. So it's clear that we need an incremental deployment of the DPP system. I also believe that we should have a DPP which can be progressively enriched, including with non-mandatory data. I totally subscribe to this quote by Sasha Blomhoff of Niaga, who said that in their experience, they found that data that is not useful today will be useful in the future as recycling technologies evolve. So for me, it's obvious that the DPP system must be co-designed with existing DPP pilot developers. So what we've done so far is we've mapped existing DPP-related standards, and as well as pilots, concepts, and initiatives. We have a list of about 160. We've developed a framework for comparing these pilots in an objective way. And the purpose of this framework is to feed information into our future project tasks, either focusing on data, DPP systems, standardization, use cases, and business models. If you have not done so yet, you are developing a DPP-related pilot, you can fill in the questionnaire using this link. In parallel, we are also preparing 2 project deliverables, which will be available for commenting in the order of February, and looking very much forward to seeing your comments then. Okay, well, that's it for me. I hand the floor back to DM.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm sure that within 20 minutes of a presentation is impossible for you to provide all information about CIRPASS, also the huge workload that we are going through. But hopefully that with this event, we can already share the key information. And of course, for all participants, don't forget to follow us on our social media channels, as well as a newsletter to receive regular updates of the project. And now to start the panel discussion of today, I could like to introduce our colleague Vincenzo Renda from Digital Europe, who will be the moderator of the two panel discussion today. And I will pass the floor to Vincenzo to introduce the panel discussion. As you can see, that we with panel one, we focus on shaping the future of the digital product passport. And for this panel, we will discuss together with our speakers on the challenge, the opportunity, the need of the digital product passport. Yes, Vincenzo, here you are.
Yeah, thanks very much. Hope everybody can see me, hear me now. Indeed, very glad to moderate this panel. As you mentioned before, Digital Europe is work package leader for stakeholder engagement in CIRPASS. We have 40 minutes for this panel, and I've already asked all participants and speakers to be brief in their replies so that we can have an interactive and dynamic discussion. As panelists today, we have for this first panel Michele Galatola, Policy Officer at DG Grow of the Commission, Holger Berg, Vice Director for Circular Economy at the Wuppertal Institute for Climate, Environment and Energy, Marcello Colledani, Professor at the Polytechnic of Milano, and Marvin Boel, who is Project Manager at VDE. And I want to kick off with you, Michele. And I think that's something that also emerged before. There are so many DPP initiatives already under development in Europe and internationally. So why did the Commission decide to introduce this extra DPP initiative?
Well, thank you for the question, Vincenzo. Indeed, as you said, and as it was also put forward by a recently published report, but probably Holger will mention that later. There are a lot of DPP-like systems under development, already developed in Europe, and many more in the making outside Europe. So this confirms what became clear when we were preparing the new eco-design regulation, that there is really a business case for information flow along supply chains and between different supply chains. And so it was part of the idea related to the eco-design that we need to make this information available to the different stakeholders so then they can use it to increase the circularity and the sustainability of products. But there is also a problem of internal market, because the DPP, if not fully interoperable, might create additional barriers and additional silos between different member states, between different supply chains. That is something that, of course, from the Commission perspective, we don't want to happen. And then there is also the societal and the political objectives. I mean, the fact that many DPP exist does not automatically mean that they are designed in order to achieve the societal objectives of having more sustainable products placed on the market and more circular products. And then, for last but not least, there is also the element of allowing member states authorities, both as market surveillance authorities and as custom authorities, to better do their work of controlling that the products that enter into the market, they're placed on the market, are really products fit for purpose. And we see a well-designed DPP also functioning in that respect. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michele. Before turning to Holger, I just remind everybody that is watching this panel that you can post your questions in the Q&A chat, and if time allows, we'll pick some of those questions and we'll direct them to the speakers. So turning to you, Holger, you are also leading the work package in CIRPASS on the prototypes. Are there challenges in creating a single DPP system, really the building blocks of the DPP, which can serve multiple product categories? And what's the role of CIRPASS? How does CIRPASS position on this issue?
Yeah, thanks, Vincenzo. Obviously, what we see when we look at the currently emerging DPPs is that most of them cater for one specific industry or sector. And I mean, all these different sectors, industries have different needs, different rules and norms regarding materials, regarding products and components, and also regarding, therefore, the information that is required in the linear economy and even more in the circular economy. And then there's different regulations and different cultures also in terms of information exchange. So there's quite a challenge in creating a DPP concept that caters and works for all industries or works cross-cutting across industries, and specifications may have to be made later. But in CIRPASS, what Caroline already showed is that we have this kind of metric structure where we, for all work packages, take care that next to working for each sector specifically, we also make information work between the sectors. And with regard to the pilots that we're going to create, we will have one specific pilot that is meant to be cross-cutting, and that will be the basis for all the for the 3 pilots that we create with regard to the distinctive industries, textiles, batteries, and electronics. So we make sure throughout the project that we can be cross-cutting.
Thanks very much for your answer. And let's turn now to you, Marcello. You are leading the work package on the DPP system. And I would like to ask you, really, how can CIRPASS shape the detailed requirements for the DPP system architecture, really, that is to say, the functioning of the DPP?
Good morning, also from my side. Yes, very important question. We are following in Work Package 3 a very formal and inclusive approach for this activity. On the one hand, we are mapping the existing initiatives related to the DPP concept, and we have created a classification framework for actually use this information that is gathered through the mapping activity in a way of defining what are the trends. Technical trends towards DPP. On the other hand, we are importing the analysis of the use cases that has been carried out in the Work Package 2, and we are trying again to be as inclusive as possible to analyze the different cases of use of this information from different stakeholders of the circular value chains in the future. And these 2 inputs will be elaborated to a formal approach of requirement gathering and requirement formalization that will identify both functional and non-functional requirements for different building blocks of the DPP system architecture.
Thank you very much, Marcello. And now let's turn to you, Marvin. You're leading the standardization work stream in CIRPASS, so I really have to ask you, why is standardization so important? And perhaps what are the challenges and opportunities of implementing the DPP based on standards?
Thank you, Vincenzo, to give me the floor. It's a very good question. In general, it was stated by my previous planner speakers that new technologies come to the market, and we are still in an area where we have a lot of different contributors and stakeholders. At one point, it comes to unpractical if everybody comes with its own solution and there is no common ground. And this is the role normally of standards to give rules, or rather guidelines, for the different stakeholders to see where they fit into this new ecosystem, so to speak. It was mentioned a few times before. In particular, challenge is the interoperability. So that, for example, if different system from different ages, so to speak, so if newer systems still have to communicate with legacy systems, that still the data is the information that is being supposed to be conveyed is still according to the guidelines that are laid out by the European Commission, for example. This is why standards are so important.
Thank you, Marvin. So, Michele, you've heard already about some of the challenges in rolling out the DPP, the challenges that CIRPASS is facing on the issue. You've heard from Marcello, Marvin, and Holger about that. They lead also some of the work packages in these projects. So I really like to ask you to just give me what you think are the 3 main challenges that you see ahead for the DPP implementation.
Well, if you have time to look at the chat, I think the people attending this workshop has already very clear in mind the challenges, because it is coming very clear from the questions. The first challenge is to identify the right set of standards to make the DPP operational. And the fact that there are already so many activities and existing standards there, it's good on one hand because it makes our work easier, but at the same time, it creates some complexity, because whatever you will choose, there will be somebody or some areas of interest that will be disappointed. And so we already expect that will create some tensions and some political interesting time. But at the end of the day, we have to keep, again, as Ilias was mentioning, the objectives in mind. It is about circularity, it is about sustainability, it is about excluding proprietary solutions and making something that is really interoperable both horizontally along the same supply chain and vertically between different value chains. So these are really the direction we will keep. The second problem is the timing, and there was also some questions in the chat, because there is a lot of interest and political pressure to deploy the DPP as soon as possible, but this as soon as possible still will require time, and we know that we will have challenges and problems that we will have to solve. So there, it's for us the difficulty to strike the right balance between the urgency and the importance of coming out with something that works, maybe not ideally, but works well since the beginning. And the third is something that probably in the chat has not yet identified, but that we all know. It's the quality of the information that will be included in the passport. Because you know the garbage in, garbage out, and we can design the best functioning passport, but if the information is not reliable or is false, then it doesn't deliver what we need.
Thank you, Michele, for your answer. And since you mentioned the chat, I will introduce, if you don't mind, the question that came up there. So why the European standardization organizations are not requested to make standards for the DPP system, or will they be requested to work on such standards?
Well, if the question is to me, the colleague asking probably is not aware of the work that we are doing, but we have been very, very clear in the fact that we have one article in the regulation, which is Article 10, which is basically listing the essential requirements that will represent the basis of a standardization mandate that we are drafting. I'm personally responsible for that. So the European Standard Organization, SENSE, like ETSI, they're already aware that something is coming, and they're already organizing themselves to deliver according to the tight timeline that we have. So definitely the passport will rely on the work of the European standardizers.
Thanks very much, Michele, and I hope that your answer will be useful for the person that asked that and is watching this panel. So, Holger, I would also like to ask you what you see as challenges in implementing the DPP, and building perhaps on what Michele already shared on that.
Yeah, exactly. So building on what Michele said on, for example, data quality, I think other technical challenges that we see relate to getting the DPP system right. That is, see that we have the, for example, interfaces to make communication and exchange of information throughout supply chains and across supply chains feasible. Then we have, and I think this is not seen so much in the focus, then we have some regulatory hurdles where different fields of regulation, let's say, can be contradictory. So for circular economy, we expect large amounts of information exchange, of cooperation and so forth, which can, and actually sometimes already do, contradict antitrust law. So we will also have to see that we get these parts right. I think with the trilogue and consultations on the product passport in many regions still underway. We also have to take care that the concept is not watered down, so that CE, a circular economy, will remain in the focus of the digital product passport and its emergence. And then I think lastly, what we hear a lot in the discussions currently is some sort of expectations that once the DPP is there, circular economy is going to happen, which I think is not a given. We will still have to see that the DPP is eventually something that can be used and will be used to create circular economy business models.
Thanks a lot, Holger. And I think that's the perfect segue for my question to Marcello when it comes to circular economy. What are the benefits that CIRPASS and the DPP can bring to industrial organizations active in Europe that are looking for circular economy business cases?
Yeah, thanks, Vincenzo. It's important to speak about the challenges, but it's also important to speak about the benefits. Because being active in several industrial projects on transition to circular economy and coordinating G-Prime and the fiber use projects, I can tell you that the set of benefits that the overall circular value chains can get are huge. I will mention only two for simplicity and for the sake of time. Of course, the main benefit is the increase of the acceptability of the materials and products, both in a B2B and B2C environment along the circular value chains, that can really open a demand for more sustainable products in different sectors. The second is more industry-oriented benefit that I see in the downstream part of the circular value chain, that is basically making disassembly recycling processes more efficient. Because if you have information about what you're treating, you can definitely gain efficiency in understanding the conditions of the product, only related to the use phase and not related to the nominal condition of the product that would be stored in the DPP. So this is clearly an efficiency issue that translates into an economic benefits for all the stakeholders in the downstream part of the circular value chain. But there are many more for the upstream part as well. Of course, the capability of reusing materials by having information about the quality and the technical characteristics of the recycled materials as well.
Thank you, Marcello. Let's turn to you, Marvin. There is, and that emerged also in, I think, in the discussions so far, even prior to this panel, that there is a significant number of ongoing standardization initiatives that are related to digital traceability to the DPP broadly. So what will be the CIRPASS specific focus in terms of standardization and interoperability activities? If you can elaborate on that, please.
Yeah, so the focus, of course, as you just said, is the interoperability. So basically that it is clear what data structures to be used, which architecture would be the most suitable for the product-specific DPPs, whereas the data to be stored, how does it look with traceability, these kind of things. Because these are all things that in order for product to prove that it can be sustainable, are then data that need to be distributed or be accessible to the parties involved or of interest.
Thank you, Marvin. Michele, I just would like to ask you if there is one feature of the DPP that you would like to see implemented, what that would be?
Well, allow me to choose two at least. One is the fact, and we didn't speak maybe sufficiently yet about that, is that for the first time in Europe, and as far as I understand also outside Europe, this will be a decentralized system. Because until now we have been used to the very big databases hosted in Brussels or in Luxembourg somewhere where we were collecting all the data from industry. And this will not be the case for the DPP, at least in the Commission proposal. I mean, there are some member states that are not yet convinced about this approach. In the Council and Parliament, we are seeing amendments going in the direction of a centralization, but this is still to be seen. But for the Commission, we don't see an alternative to the decentralization for a number of issues that, if we have time, we can discuss. So the possibility to really develop it as a decentralized, which doesn't mean automatically based on blockchain. I noticed that there was one question in the chat, so I will not type the answer, but for the time being, we are technology agnostic. There is no specific reference, blockchain yes or no, or other technology yes or no. This is what we will look into through the standardization work. But it has to be decentralized. So the information has to be stored by the economic manufacturers that produce the information, not sent centrally to Brussels. And the second thing that I think it will be a challenge technically, and I'm curious to see how we will solve that, is the access rights management. Because the DPP will include the several layers of information, not visible to everybody, but depending on who you are, you will have access to a subset of information. And I think that's, as I said, it will be an interesting challenge for us.
Thank you. Holger, can I ask you the same question?
Sorry, come again?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if I'd like to hear your views also about the most relevant feature that you would like to see implemented in the DPP and CIRPASS.
Well, coming from the circular economy world, my view and my ambition, so to speak, is to make it work for circular economy. So everything that relates to that is at my heart.
Thank you. Marcello?
Yeah, my answer is very close to the answer of Holger, coming from circular economy as well. I would really love to see implementation cases of making circular process chains more efficient thanks to the presence of the right data at the right time to the right stakeholders.
Thank you. You, Marvin?
Yeah, for me, it would be what Marcello said earlier, the acceptability of whatever CIRPASS is coming up with. No matter how quality high it is, although it is one of our aims to have a high quality outcome, if it's not accepted, then it is it's not doing anyone good. So my wish would be, if something is coming out, it should be that it is broadly accepted with ideally everybody, or at least the majority. That would be my take on that.
Thank you, Marvin. Okay, so let's turn to the questions in the chat, and I'll pick a few. So let me just kick off with this one, and it's for you, Michele. So can you just elaborate on how the DPP will apply to various product categories? Is the intention to have, let's say, basic alignment on specific aspects and then leave the rest for a more open product-specific approach? Or what is the extent of, let's say, harmonization of the DPP requirements across multiple product categories?
Yes, the harmonization, the one that will happen through the European Standardizer Organization, will be on the DPP system, so on the IT infrastructure behind. But then when it comes to the DPP data, so the data that you will read when scanning your data carrier, that will be decided at product group level. So the information that you may find for product A may be different from the information that you will find from product B, which may be different from the information we'll find for another product. And that will be discussed and decided when we develop the sectorial legislation in collaboration with member states, NGOs, and industry representatives, of course, including manufacturers. At that level, there will be not direct harmonization, but there will be an indirect harmonization in the sense that, let's make an example. If for a product we decide to have the environmental footprint or the carbon footprint as an element, an attribute to be shown, then that way of calculating the carbon footprint in terms of the general approach will be the same that will be used for other passport, because keeping in mind the interoperability, it would make no sense if we prescribe a set of rules for a product A, which is different from the rules from product B, in terms of the things like the unit of measures, like you identify other specific rules. Of course, how you calculate the emission for a specific process will be specific to the process. We cannot generalize, but the data exchange protocols and certain things will remain consistent among different product groups, and this will translate in the medium term to cost saving for companies, especially SMEs, that today are confronted with a multitude way of providing information depending who is asking for that information. Through the DPP, we expect as an added value to reduce this kind of noise around information and to go more to a streamlined way of providing it.
Thanks a lot, Michele. I see in the chat there are many questions when it comes to the timeline. So there you go, another question for you. And I know it's sometimes challenging to predict what will be ahead, but I think that'd be useful for the audience if you just elaborate on a few milestones ahead that you see for the DPP and the ESPR discussions at institutional level, and then the follow-up process on the delegated acts.
Yeah, I can give you the institutional reply, but then I invite my colleagues maybe to bring me down to earth and tell me if I'm completely wrong. I think there are there are a lot of variables, so it's very difficult to give you one date. But there are three different timelines that overlap one with the other, because as we mentioned, this is a proposal from the Commission, which is now analyzed by the Council and the Parliament. They will propose amendment, and then the three institutions have to sit together in the so-called trialogue, and we have to agree on a common text. And then that one becomes the one that is mandatory to be adopted. So this is complex. This will take most of next year to be concluded. So we hope that by end of 2023, this first part of the work is done. Then we need to start developing the product group related legislation, and we have first to identify on which product groups we will regulate, because we cannot regulate the entire market. I mean, that we know it's impossible. So we will have 2, 3, maybe 4 product groups each year that will be regulated. So we need to develop the specific legislation for those products, including the DPP data for those products, and that will require times because there is an open consultation process, there is an impact assessment. So we try to be sure that we do things right. And then there is the timeline of the DPP itself, because in order to be operational, we need the standards. If we don't have the standards, we don't have the DPP. I mean, we have a plan B, but maybe we shouldn't discuss that now. So if you start piling up all the different timelines, I think in the most optimistic scenario, you land in a place where you will have a DPP on a shelf around 2026, 2027, if everything goes right. And for example, just this Friday, the trialogue on the batteries regulation, which is the first legislation that introduced the DPP, has been concluded, and the DPP passport for batteries will be operational in early 2027. So you see the timing is more or less bringing us there. So I don't think earlier, maybe later, if we'll have some hiccups during the process. But please, colleagues, tell me if I'm completely off.
I don't think so. But I think what's fair to say is that I mean, the European Commission's or European Union's efforts around the DPP are certainly the most important and the most central ones, but they're not the only ones. So we see lots of DPP plans, but also DPP digital product passports themselves emerging and actually being brought to the market. So there are already activities creating and digital product passports, putting out and using digital product passports. So specifically in the area of batteries, there's the Batteries Made with Germany project, which I think Tilman already posted. Then there's obviously activities around Catena X. There's quite some activities in the textile sector, which is often also motivated not just by circular economy, but by social sustainability motivations and social compliance motivations. So there's quite a bandwidth, and it's, while I think the European digital passport will shape quite a bit of the landscape, there's lots of other schemes that are eventually being created and that will in some way relate to the European product passport.
Thank you, Olger. And speaking about international activities, we have a question from the audience on whether CIRPASS is looking into work at the ISO level when it comes to DPP and in particular product circularity. And so I would just like to ask to Marvin if you can elaborate on the extent to which CIRPASS is looking into specific standardization activities, including those from ISO in its activities.
So as of now, it is a European project, which has the aim, of course, to have all the members of the European Union to be connected. Ideally, at one point, it will go into the international field. As of now, we are struggling enough to make it compliant within the European Union. But ideally, since we are in a global economy, at one point it has to become international. Ideally, it can be. Let's see what the future holds.
Thank you, Marvin. Another question from the audience, and I think it's from someone that is involved in business that asks, and I think that I'd like to have Michele's answer on that. If the DPP is also about monitoring Scope 3 emissions and eventually bring them down together with supply chain partners.
Well, I think yes and no. I mean, yes, in the sense that if there will be a requirement in the product-related legislation about carbon footprint, then this will push the entire supply chain to provide that information. And of course, by providing that information, you will be able to see where the contribution comes from, especially if you are the manufacturer who is responsible for producing the passport information. And so by doing that, you will be able to also look into how to reduce them, which is, if I can just move away from 1 second from the DPP itself, it's a nice new feature of the new eco-design regulation. Because compared to the previous one, where we had only requirements specific to the product, to the characteristic of the product as placed on the market. So before, it was difficult to have something on carbon footprint. Now we will have more and more also requirements that are more related to how the product is produced and not to the characteristics of the product itself, which per se is even a more eco-design approach, because it doesn't tell you what you have to change on your specific product, but gives you the flexibility of looking also along the supply chain if you can achieve the same objective by, for example, changing supplier or changing the design or changing other characteristics of your manufacturing process. So from that perspective, this new eco-design is even more an eco-design compared to what we had in the past.
Thank you. Anyone from the panelists that want to add on that? Okay, so then another question, and that's more about energy consumption and energy, essentially the consumption, the energy consumption footprint of the DPP. Is there any? Are there any studies that have already tried to identify what is this footprint? Let's ask that to Marcello, perhaps.
Well, again, this is another important point. We are not directly having activities in our work package to tackle this issue, but of course, we will comment about this topic in our roadmap, because this is the last outcome of work package 3 to the final roadmap, mainly analyzing the still existing gaps that need to be, of course, carried out and taken into account before the implementation. This aspect of energy is important. It will, of course, very much depend also on the architecture and the characteristics of the architecture and its key components that we will be revising and summarizing our recommendations. So definitely we will take this into account.
Thank you very much, Marcello, for your answer. And I want to check if there are other questions that we can ask. Yes, so there's one on data accuracy. For you, Michele, will there be any emphasis on that by the Commission when it comes to the DPP?
There will be, again, in the product-specific legislation, there will be rules on how to verify each requirement that is there. That is usually happening also in the past. So it will be there that we will define what kind of data we will need, what kind of standards for measurements we will require, and also what kind of verification will be needed. Because in some cases, we may rely, as we often do today, on self-declaration. I think in an increasing number of cases, we will rely on third-party verification. So, but again, this is something that will be discussed with the stakeholders when developing the sectorial legislation.
Thank you, Michele. Final question, and I'd like to give the floor to everybody that would like to ask that. It's about really the link of DPP to existing business operations. So essentially, the question is the following: will you also be looking at the practicality of how the DPP will be connected with existing systems in place in businesses, such as ERP systems? Or will you leave this to vendors of DPP software to figure out? Let's start with you, Michele, and then let's see from the others.
Sorry, I was distracted by the chat. I didn't hear the question, I confess.
Yeah, so the question essentially is whether the Commission will look into the practicality of how the DPP will be connected with the existing systems in businesses, like ERP systems, or whether this will be left to vendors of DPP software to figure out.
No, I think our intention is to provide an environment that allows the creation of multiple DPPs by service providers, all in compliance with the set of standards that we will define. Then we think it will be up to the market and up to the companies already existing to develop and tailor the DPPs based on the needs of the different users. I don't think that's the work of the Commission.
Thank you very much. Anyone still want to add anything on sort of the rollout of the DPP in existing business operations?
Well, maybe on another note, I think it will be important, as I think Michele already pointed out, that the DPP should be able to work with existing databases, specifically those that are maintained by the European Union, like in databases that relate to REACH or the SCIP database and so forth. So that ideally companies and other players would not have to put in their data and data points at multiple places or provide them for multiple instances.
Thank you for your point, Holger. Unfortunately, our panel is coming to an end. This was a very, very interesting discussion, and I think we have addressed several important points on standardization, on supply chain aspects in the DPP. So really, thank you very much, Marvin, Holger, Marcello, and Michele for your input. All right, so welcome back, everyone, for the second panel of our CIRPASS conference today, where in this panel we'll focus specifically on the prototypes in 3 specific sectors which are currently addressed by CIRPASS, namely electronics, batteries, and textiles. And I have the pleasure to be joined for this panel by William Neal, who is advisor on circular economy and green growth at DG Environment of the Commission, Edward Wagner, project manager at the Fraunhofer Institute for Reliability and Macro Integration, Andreas Schneider, CEO at the Global Textile Scheme, and Ilka van Dalvig, who is policy manager at the EIT Inno Energy. So let's kick off with you, William. How does the DPP contribute to achieving a circular economy for Europe?
Thanks, Vincenzo. At the end of the last session, I think 1 or 2 people were saying that we have to really restrict this to circularity. But in fact, circularity is not an aim in itself. We don't want things to go circular just for the sake of it. It's really because it will deliver on climate, on biodiversity, on pollution, on other environmental pressures, and indeed on strategic autonomy in terms of the supply of materials that we need. But what it does is to decouple our material use and the impacts of that material use from our well-being, because it is that material use which is driving the environmental degradation, but at the same time we want to maintain our lifestyles. So to do that, the aim is really to keep the materials at their highest level of utility for as long as possible. And so it's really all about maximizing value. And that can be done in three ways, really. There's the sort of resource efficiency aspect of circularity. So you're sort of maximizing the added value you get for each ton of materials going into your products, your production chain, your buildings, and so on. Second is the optimization of the products and assets during their lifetime. So maximizing the durability, maximizing the intensity of use. So this can be circular business models for sharing and so on, and of course minimizing waste, minimizing the amount that sort of reach the end of their useful life. And then the third party is really about maximizing recycling, and there we're not just talking about quantity but very much about quality, where I think the product passport will have a big impact. So I think you have to think of circularity not as being this sort of the usual logo infographic of the arrows going around. It's really about retaining and maximizing value, and as Ilya said earlier, it's really about moving away from a quantity-based system to one based more on quality and value. Now today, so much of that value in products is really linked and dependent on the amount of information that we have about those products, and we need them to carry that information with them through their journey through the economy. And of course, today most of that information is lost. But the thing is that there are split incentives along those value chains. So a producer, for example, might not have a direct interest in making available information, might not have a direct interest in reducing the costs borne by others along the chain because they don't have that information, and might in fact have few opportunities for sort of capturing extra value. So what we're trying to do with the digital product passport is really to make that essential data available to others along the value chain, both on the B2B, business to business, and business to consumer sides. And actually, I saw a comment in the chat or a question about sort of consumer information, and I don't actually expect consumers to really be directly accessing digital passport information a great deal. They already have too much information. I think what that data will be used for is to provide them with services in terms of comparison possibilities and so on. So yeah, I'll maybe stop there. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of voluntary initiatives, and I think that the Wuppertal study has demonstrated a lot of them. We've seen from those that there is a business case there to a certain extent, but what we're trying to do is to go beyond that to make further data available which wouldn't otherwise be made available, and to do that in the public interest, so in the environmental, in the consumer interest.
Thank you very much, William, for your opening remarks on the issue. So let's now turn to the three work stream leaders on the specific prototypes. And I would like to ask, I would like to start with Edward and ask you, as CIRPASS activities progress, what you see in terms of challenges and opportunities for the DPP when it comes to the electronics sector specifically. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Vicente, for the question. So I think maybe on the bigger picture, the DPP is a major sustainability innovation because it's the tool for information equality, basically. So a possibility to provide everyone with the information they need to act in a sustainable way. So we need to establish basically today what is necessary for tomorrow. We had this phrase heard by Carolyn also. And for example, now looking into the electronics sector in particular, so the challenges and opportunities. If you want to improve recycling, for example, we need to think on the future waste. So we need to identify today all substances that might be restricted in the future. And I mean, like take the comparison, look at the development of the electronic products that we had 20 years ago and the variety of materials today.
and now think where we might be in the future, 2040. So this is one of the biggest challenges, actually, this material question and this material data, because the data is not always available and maybe protected, IP protected. So there are some issues and challenges that are relating to this point. Another big opportunity I see is just to promote sustainable products. And if we want to do this, we need to increase the demand by providing consumers with the information, for example, on durability, and also make this information comparable. So I think these two opportunities to make a point here.
Thank you very much, Edward. And Ilka, I'd like now to turn to you and ask you the same question with regards to batteries specifically. You're on mute, Ilka. Seems to be an issue. But maybe, okay, as you figure out, let me then just go to Andreas and ask you the same question for textiles, with the textiles prototype.
Well, textile is a very fragmented industry with very international value chains and very small players. And therefore, I expect, and I'm hoping the DPP to bring speed into the transformation process. I think we're in the biggest transition period of the industry ever. What are the challenges? I think that DPP and the CIRPASS project will help to alignment and taking the DPP serious at the stakeholders. When I see how many people attend today on a master data topic, which at the end of the day it is, it shows a change in mindset, which is great. The second challenge that I see is the rollout, because the answer might surprise the audience here. There's a very simple thing I experience a lot, is that in the companies, nobody is, I mean, it's a cross-sector topic, and nobody is responsible for that. So this will be one of the challenges with deployment. So what are the chances in the textile sector? I think it will create the necessary speed on standards and infrastructure that wouldn't come at all. I mean, I see this for many years, and now it's happening. So this is really good. And I see, again, the great chance to increase the awareness of the stakeholders. This is the key benefit to me, particularly when it comes to the IT providers. This popped up with one of the questions from the chat. I believe that they play a significant role, and the earlier they accept the urgency of the topic DPP, the earlier they can adapt the products, like Michele said. So this is the biggest benefit from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas. I still see that Ilka has issues with connecting. So let's go back to you, William. And I think so far we've heard about the many various challenges of rolling out the DPP. We've also heard about opportunities. So what you can say to industry as it prepares for the DPP adoption, and how can the path to ultimately adopting these new provisions can be done as smooth as possible?
Well, Vincenzo, Michele was explaining in the last session a little bit about the timing of the different parts. So we have the sort of the regulation which is going through now through the Parliament and the Member States discussions, and then we will come to the delegated acts after that. So I think both in terms of the data architecture and the systems architecture, there's not so much that can be done until things are more clearly defined. So I mean, the delegated acts, which will come after the regulation is adopted, will define what data will need to be made available for those specific product groups. And those relevant product attributes of that product group may differ. So they might, as we've already said, they could include recycled content, recyclability, availability of spare parts, substances of concern, technical parameters, footprints, technical information, compliance information, and so that there are many possibilities, but it will be, as Michele said, very much subject to impact assessment, consultation, and so on. And also that information might be fixed more at the model level, the batch level, or it could be serialized by item. So we might be talking about different levels of granularity. So you might be able to predict what would be the most pertinent and what's likely to come into the in terms of requirements for the products that you're putting on the market. And it certainly wouldn't harm you to have that information at hand already, but it's likely to be a couple of years before that is really required. It should be said that the entity that's putting the product on the market will be liable. This is also responding to a question I saw in the chat. And it should be able, I mean, that entity should be able to make sure that that required information is available and accurate. And of course, that means working with supply chains to identify that information. But I think, yeah, and in terms of the systems architecture, we really need to look at and see what comes out of the legislation, what comes out of the standards that are set. And I think that in terms of things like being able to put a QR code on your product or the batch or the model, I think most enterprises are already pretty capable of doing that. But I think going back to, I think with Marcello in the last discussion said, I mean, it's, I think maybe more interesting, less to prepare for the requirements, but more to prepare for the potential business opportunities. And last week we organized a workshop where we saw, or we heard from quite a few different existing private initiatives with big brands and small companies that were using the passports for their own products. And in the textiles value chain, which Andreas was just mentioning, we saw, for example, Eon was saying that their brands expect to get a factor of 1.9 more revenue from their garments through the product passport. So that's 90% extra revenue. And they can enable customers to have a QR tag, to scan their QR tag to actually resell their product. So there are many different possibilities for circular business models. I can come back to some of those later. I don't want to go on for too long, but I mean, just in terms of the opportunities for post-sales services, servicing, upgrading, takebacks, the possibilities of digital twins, the possibilities of not actually selling your product, as Elias was saying at the beginning, but maybe offering it as a service, the possibilities of creating closed loops so you get your products back. So I think there are very many, particularly B2B possibilities. And I'm very happy to go into those later. And I should also say that the Commission is, and we've announced a circular business hub. So we're intending to actually also provide some guidance to businesses on how to go more circular more generally, but also how to deal with the digital product passport. So there will be some advice available, particularly to SMEs.
Thank you very much, William. Ilka, I hope that now you have solved the problems with the mic. And as lead of the batteries prototype in CIRPASS, I'd just like to have your views on challenges and opportunities of rolling out the DPP for this specific value chain.
Thank you very much, Vincenzo, and thanks everyone for the patience with the technical delays. I think the battery sector is in kind of a very good position. We have been just hearing from a provisional agreement between the Council and the Parliament on the proposal for a new battery regulation that has been proposed back in 2020. So the thinking within the industry around how to develop really this digital product passport for batteries has been with the industry for quite some time, and there has been a lot of thinking around some of the essential parts that William also addressed. I think increased transparency also on the supply chain is quite crucial. And there I think it is actually also very important for the end consumers. For the battery sectors, materials play a major part of the battery itself, how they are produced, from where they are sourced. I think it's an important piece of information that battery industry has suffered from when it comes to cobalt. Everybody knows the labor in those countries. So I think this will actually be a good way to show also through the downstream or upstream, as you want to say, where the material from the product itself comes from. The other one, of course, is sharing of data. And there also William touched upon that there might be some data that is commercially sensitive. So there we really need to think on how to share those data, how to store the data, and also who can access those data. But all of this together, I think, will be a good push towards sustainability and circularity, looking upon the very critical material question. Everybody knows it's a scarcity of those materials, so we need really to make most of its use while they're within the battery, and also later when we recycle or repurpose a battery. And for doing this, we really need to keep track on how much of the material, what materials inside such a battery. And this information will also be very crucial for the people who are recycling those products. There might be some hazardous substances in it. So a general increase of information on the content, as well as performance and durability of batteries. I think it's a very good step forward, and we are in a very humble position. We already mentioned some of those initiatives that are going on, like Catena X in the battery sector. We also have the Global Battery Alliance that we are very happy that they're working together with us in the CIRPASS project, and also the German Battery Pass initiative. And I think we can really put the DPP and CIRPASS at a higher level by cooperating and ensuring interoperability between all those different initiatives, maybe at a local or national level or international level as well.
Thank you very much, Ilka. Edward, when it comes to electronics, there is existing legislation already in place in the EU. So does CIRPASS take that into consideration in its activities?
Yes, thank you, Richard. There is indeed a lot of legislation already in place. Yes, we will screen this legislation. So one goal of the DPP is to make the compliance easier, right? And that means that the DPP needs to include this necessary or this mandatory information for compliance. And when we are developing the DPP now, and especially in the electronic sector, we're kind of blessed and cursed at the same time with all this existing compliance. So on the one hand, you see, we are kind of blessed because all this knowledge is already condensed in the existing legislation. There are long processes behind for each legal act, and that we need to consider and also to use. So, for example, from a waste legislation perspective, that would mean the WE directive. It aims to provide waste treatment operators with the necessary information to identify the products that contain hazardous or dangerous substances, and then that would enable them to sort them out. Just one example, all of you who are related to compliance know there's other legislation that concerns further information requirements, for example, on how to repair or dispose products. And here you also see why we are a bit cursed. And there are so many information requirements scattered throughout all legislation. There is different wordings behind different definitions, and that gives us a little pain in the stomach. So also considering over 30 different electronic product groups that are covered in eco-design and energy legislation. This all wrapped up, will be part of our analysis. It will take a while. You can see our tables are huge, but finally, in the end, yes, we will use the current legislation as a basis, but of course, not only, we will extend this basis with other useful information to increase product circularity, and in the end, link everything together in the DPP, and then hopefully make our compliance lives easier in the end.
Thanks very much, Edward. Andreas, in your view, when it comes to textiles, how can CIRPASS advance the identification of product end of life?
That's one of the big animals in the room because television sets don't get washed. So pretty simple. To give you an example, so we have a recycling rate in the European Commission of below 1%. So if we want to increase that, and I don't know who of you has been into a sorting place, manual sorting will not be the future. Pretty plain and simple, particularly for textiles. And so what I see already is activities or chances in two areas. The one is the identification technology. Without getting technical, is it QR code? Is it RFID? Is it QR code and RFID? If it's only RFID, is it what frequency and so on? Just to give you a glimpse what we're talking about. The good news is that I see it's a great consortium. So we're looking not over the fence, we jump over the fence, which is good. So we're not bound in what's possible today. We are looking what chances are in the market. There is technologies in the drawers that are not out because the scalability is not there. So my hope is that the Commission is also helping to align this type of borderlines to make things possible that are not possible today. And I see good chances that this will happen. And the second thing is the data alignment. Once you identify the product, so how do we bring the DPP data then to the product? And also here, what Eduard said, sort of boring topic, harmonizing semantics, big animal, but this will happen within the project. We already started. And so just to align the wording for the granularity levels is already one of the tasks that we had on the table last week. So we are working on it and we're very hopeful. And I'm very actually thankful for the Commission that we are doing this because we're not known for a very standardized industry for obvious reasons. So again, this will be possible, but not with the tools of today. We have to develop new ones. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andreas, for your answer. And I would like now to introduce one question which came from the audience, and we just have 3 minutes. So William, that's for you, and I'd like to ask you to be brief in your reply. So what's the Commission thinking on the DPP scope, whether it will be at item, model, or batch level? And is the Commission also considering component level DPPs, and to what end?
Okay, well, whether it's batch, model, or individual item, I mean, it depends on the specific product. I mean, there are, if it's something which will benefit from having dynamic tracking and tracing throughout its lifetime, and where you can really register repairs and things like that on a specific product, then it will make sense more to have really serialized item-specific identification. But I think that those cases will not be so many. When it comes to the general scope, I mean, it's basically everything except for food and feed. And just to come back to something which Edward was raising as well, I think I can see that there will be bits of information that we don't need now, but we will in the future. But we have to be careful not to overload companies. And I think that we need to bear in mind that delegated acts can be revised in the future, maybe every 3 years, every 5 years, so we can actually take into account progress and new needs. And just one last point, just on the scope, there is a possibility, it's Article 9.2 in the regulation, for other bits of regulation to kind of opt in to use the architecture, the structure of the digital product passport. So we may see other bits of information or information requirements being added through other bits of legislation in the future. But for the moment, I think we really need to focus where we are on circularity, sustainability, and trying to keep it reasonably simple so that we don't trip over ourselves too much in the beginning.
Thanks very much, William, for your answer. And we need to conclude our panel here. It has been a pleasure to moderate this session where we looked into the DPP prototypes and the work that CIRPASS is doing on those. So I'd like to really thank you very much for all your contributions, William, Andreas, Edward, and Ilka. And I really look forward to the upcoming activities of CIRPASS. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you a lot, Vincenzo and the panelists. Very informative and interactive discussions. I know that there's still a lot of questions from the participants in the chat, and we could not have enough time for every to answer every questions, but no worry, because on the CIRPASS website later we will also develop a frequently Q&A there, so then we will take into account your questions today and provide the answer to this question later. Now, let's talk about CIRPASS stakeholder engagement activities and how you can join us. First of all, we could like to emphasize that the stakeholder engagement activities is central in the CIRPASS action plan. And for this, we have the three objectives when it comes to stakeholder engagement activities. First things is to bring together key stakeholders from across Europe who could participate or have an impact on the DPP's operation and success. And the second objective is to facilitate the cross-sector open stakeholder engagement in the DPP evolution. We wanted the DPP to bring the benefits to as many stakeholders as possible. And the last objective is to build stakeholder consensus on key data to be included in the DPP for the three key sectors of the project, which are batteries, electronics, and the textiles. And how we can achieve these objectives, now I will share with you in the next slide, the target audience of CIRPASS when we design the work for the project. The first group, very important, is industrial stakeholders who are included in this stakeholder group. There could be businesses, SMEs, startups, big companies in the three key sectors, but also the cross-sectoral businesses. SMEs, associations, trade association at the EU and national level, chambers of commerce and industry, which means that we try to reach out to all the channels where we can share our message, also to call in action or consultations from the industry. And we have three other key target groups for the project as well, which are the public authorities and policymakers that can include the European Commission, European Parliament, national public authorities. Standardization organizations is another group, another target group of CIRPASS, which can include the sector-specific standardization organizations, but also the one who work across sectors as well. And we focus on the standardization organizations at the national, European, and international levels. Last but not least is social partners who will help us to increase the uptake from the CIRPASS results and increase our community to bring the benefits of CIRPASS to the broader audiences, which can include the EU Digital Innovation Hubs, civil society organizations active in the field of consumption and production, circular economy, sustainable development. We also target the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, and especially we could like to also reach out to related initiatives funded under the Digital Europe program or the other funds who are working in different aspects related to the DPP. And NGOs, also the target group that we will reach out in the future of the project. Next, we will go a bit more in the different activities that we will develop and implement during the duration of CIRPASS, how the stakeholder can join with us. First of all, we are developing the stakeholder mapping, where we engage relevant stakeholders in consultations and events. And for this stakeholder mapping, if you want to be included in this list and receive the updates from CIRPASS, please don't forget the email that we have here is info@cirpassproject.eu. Next, will be the other type of activities, which are the public events. So today, the event today is the first public event of CIRPASS, where we introduce the project to the audience, and we will have a final conference of the project planned to take place in March 2024 to present CIRPASS key outcomes and exploitation activities. And next, very important is the consultations around CIRPASS output. This includes surveys, questionnaires, interview, polls around all the topic that CIRPASS are working on. We are also mapping the DPP pilots, as Caroline also mentioned in her presentation. This is important for us to know about the other DPP pilots out there, the other initiative who are working on the DPP. So for this one, if you have the DPP pilots, or you know about the DPP pilots that you want to share with us and to be included in our list, please reach out to us. And that can be the questionnaires that Caroline already mentioned, and maybe Caroline can share again in the chat the link to this survey where we collect the information from the other DPP pilots. And later on CIRPASS, a website, we will also publish this questionnaire for more stakeholders can join. We have a series of workshops will be organized during the duration of the project. And here, as you can see, are the list of the different topics that this workshop will focus on: stakeholder consultation, forum on priority information, the detailed requirements of the DPP reference architecture, DPP technical blueprint, data space integration, standardization and gap analysis, opportunities, challenges, and barriers in the development of the DPP, and DPP roadmaps. For these workshops, some workshop will be a very focused workshop where we work with a group of experts, and some workshop we will open to receive input and feedback from the broader stakeholders community. And in the next slide, we will also go a bit more to how you can connect with CIRPASS. First, we have the website, CIRPASS.eu. So this is the official website of CIRPASS. At the moment, the website is just the very start in the development of the website with the landing page. But in January, we will develop this website with more information, more functions for the audience to find different information about the project, including news, events, the workshop, on the call to action that we could like to involve stakeholder into our activities, together with the other updates on the project progress and the inputs, the outputs from the project. We have social media channels, include Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and I'm sure, like when I introduce these channels to you, our colleague will also share the link to different channels in the chat that you can also subscribe, follow us in order to receive more updates of CIRPASS in the future. We also have a newsletter where we will also provide information when we have a call for experts, or call for inputs, call for feedback from stakeholders on certain activities and certain results from the project that we are working on. And last but not least, we have the direct mail link, info@cirpassproject.eu, where you can also reach out to us if you have questions related to the project, or you want to engage in certain activities. So I could say that through this channel, you definitely can receive a lot of information from us with different activities of CIRPASS. And that are the very highlights, some highlights from the stakeholder engagement activity that we have. So follow us, that we will provide more updates and information in the coming weeks and months, because there are many activities going on, and this is a very start of the project. And now I will pass the floor to my colleague Caroline to share some live polls that we will have to understand a little bit more about the participants today.
Thank you, DM. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So first of all, before I launch the polls, I would like to thank everyone for your participation and for being so active in the chat. Your questions are very important. We've noted them. Ilias told us in October that they are learning from our questions, and we are learning from your questions. So please chat and put your questions. They're very important. So before I leave you, I will launch just 3 poll questions. They should appear as a pop-up on your screen. And if you want to see the answers to the polls, the results of the polls, you go to the bottom right of your screen and you click on the polls. And normally you should, if everything goes right, you should see the results of the polls. So the first poll is, do you have a clear understanding of what is a digital product passport? Possible answers are very unclear, clear, or very clear. So I let you submit your vote, and I see that okay, clear is coming out as the majority, which is pretty good. Pretty good. This is I think you can continue voting. Yeah, 66% is clear, so I think we're doing pretty well. All right, perfect. And so I will launch question 2. So are you familiar with the requirements of the digital product passport set out in the proposal for the eco-design for Sustainable Products Regulation, ESPR? Have you read it? Are you familiar with the contents of this proposed regulation? And I see that we have some work to do because only about half of you are familiar with this. All right, just to know, we have a 2-page summary of the requirements for the digital product passport that we will publish on our website in January, so that you don't have to read the 700 pages of the legislation. You just read the 2 pages, and that you'll be up to date. And thank you. Yeah, I thought that would be useful. And I will launch the last poll here. Do you believe that the digital product passport will be useful for enabling the transition to a more circular economy? No, I don't. I'm not really sure. And yes, I do. Very nice. Well, we have a very positive audience today, so that's very nice. Thank you very much for this. And so with that, I thank you once again for coming. I hope you found that this event was informative. There's a tiny, very short poll, a questionnaire just to get feedback on how you perceive this event. Thank you for taking the time for answering that. They will be useful for us. And hope to connect very soon through our stakeholder engagement activities. Thank you very much.